Thank you. I appreciate you all and just happy to be here and be a part of this.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it as well. And we got everything, I think, worked out with this video podcast thing. We're going to have it so the people that are watching on Facebook, they can ask questions if they'd like. We might get tons of questions, might get no questions. We'll see how it goes. So this is the first time for us with this. So, but we really appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely.
We know you're super busy. It's that time of the year to get things rocking and rolling. So we do appreciate you taking the time to do this. This is kind of, for us, you're actually our first head coach, I guess, we've spoken to
Yeah.
Okay.
on this podcast. So thank you very, very much. We always like to start with your softball story and growing up. What was it like? We've had so many different players say, well, in my area that I lived in, I had to play t-ball or I had to play baseball or we had slow pitch until I was 14, or there's so many different variables across the country. So what was your softball story growing up?
Yeah, I think probably similar to others. I started at a really young age. I did the t-ball. I'm originally from Hawaii. So growing up in Hawaii, when you're that young, you play what we call bobby sock softball. So I did that. I was a multi-sport athlete growing up. So I was doing softball and I was also doing soccer. And at some point, I think when I was around 10 or 11, I decided I wanted to be a pitcher. So what my dad did, my dad has been there from the start. He's my biggest fan, and he's been my coach for my entire life and he's taught me everything that I know. He literally hung a tire up on a palm tree in our backyard and said, you just have to figure out how to throw the ball through the tire. And that's kind of how my pitching career started, was in the backyard and throwing through a tire with my dad, and us just kind of growing up and figuring it out. So yeah, I started off playing bobby sox in Hawaii, and we actually moved to Washington, D.C. when I was in 6th grade because my dad was in the military. So I ended up playing soccer throughout middle school, and I was playing ODP, which is a pretty high level for soccer. And then my 8th grade year, I got asked to pick up with a travel team, and I just for a national championship. They went to nationals, and I said okay after I was done playing soccer. And from there, that's kind of where I decided that this is going to be my my priority sport. So then ended up playing travel ball the rest of my high school career, and that was that.
Well, I have to start off by saying that I'm a little jealous that you made spoke the sentence hung a tire from a palm tree, because in the Northeast where we're cold for, I don't know, 7 months of the year, it feels like having a palm tree would be really nice at times. But that's actually pretty cool. That story is completely different from anybody we've talked to, really.
Our fake palm trees aren't strong enough.
That's true.
For the tire.
Yeah, we have indoor palm trees that aren't real.
That's
But
hey, I live in Ohio, so it's not that warm here.
Right. Yeah. Well, how often do you get back to Hawaii?
I try to get back as much as I can. Sometimes with work and our schedule, it's pretty tough, but I try to get back at least once a year. Usually I go back during Christmas. It's the best time to go back and to be with family.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't able to make it this Christmas, but definitely either this summer or next Christmas. So I come from a big Hawaiian family. I don't know how many Hawaiian people you know, but
I don't.
There's a lot of people to go. Well, I'm your first, so awesome.
now really quick, you're like a Nats fan, Ravens, Redskin. Like you're kind of, how did that come about? Real quick, just to get off topic before we get too deep in this.
Her little stint in DC. Yeah. That's why.
Yes. So, obviously I'm originally from Hawaii. Very proud person from Hawaii, proud Hawaiian. And the one thing that's a part of our culture, just being loyal to where you come from. So when we moved to DC, it was just Hawaii's home, but DC became home, and DC is now home for me, as my parents still live there, and one of my brothers still lives there, and all of my friends. And that's where I went to school in middle school and high school. So naturally you have to cheer for all the teams in the area, good or bad. I am 100% Nationals all the way, and anybody that knows me knows that I'm a diehard fan. Unfortunately, Redskins not that great this year, so I jumped on the Ravens bandwagon. And the other thing with that, John Harbaugh is a Miami alum, so I got to show some love for the boys up north from DC. But I'm definitely a huge DC fan. I love the city of DC, the people of DC, and all the teams.
Well, this last year in the MLB, you had a really nice fall with the Nats. So That
Yep.
was pretty awesome. It was fun to watch.
Not so much for our Orioles.
It's okay.
I know. And you know what? I grew up high school, it was like Cal Ripken and Brady
Yeah.
Anderson and Rafi Palmeiro. So I love
Brady.
the O's too. So yeah, but the Nationals obviously had a great year, and I'd like to say that Adam Eaton is a Miami Redhawk as well. So yeah, lots of red and white in the pros. So it's awesome.
Nice. Well, let's talk about your college experience.
Mhm.
How did you decide to go to Virginia Tech, and what were some of the biggest struggles from going from high school to college, and how did you overcome them to lead you to success?
Yeah, so when I was getting recruited, obviously it was a really long time ago. Virginia Tech, the program started in 1996, and I went in. I started the fall of 1998. So the one enticing thing for me was just, Coach just said you can be the start and help us build this thing up. And so I really liked that aspect to help be there at the start of a program. And for me, my why back then was scholarship, and that was a big deal. My parents worked hard their whole life, and that was my goal: is I'm going to work really hard and get a scholarship. And Virginia Tech offered me that, and I love the coaching staff there, and that's kind of what led me to go be a Hokie.
What was the competition level like? Because Virginia Tech's kind of, in the past couple of years, really taken a couple steps forward in that top 25-ish, like kind of there. They get a little more talk now than they have, it seems like, maybe in the past. So what was it like then? Because the ACC and people didn't respect it that much, and it's just now with Florida State and the ACC network, it seems like they're
Right.
building some momentum moving forward. But when you were there, what was it like? And
Yeah.
what were some of the the struggles maybe that when you played those out of conference games that you might have had?
Yeah, it was a different game. It was just a different time, a different era. I mean, I played college ball in the 90s, which is kind of crazy. I mean, we weren't even in I played in the Atlantic 10 and the Big East. So that's going way far
Yeah,
back.
I knew.
So
Sheesh.
back then we were playing we played 72 games in the regular season. Now we can only it was just a different time, and the SEC wasn't the SEC as it is today, and the game wasn't as visible like it is today. So I think it's just it was just a different time. But I know you had asked earlier about some of the struggles, and I think for me, first off, I'm a first generation college student out of my family. So, my parents didn't go to college. I didn't really know a lot of people who went to college. The area that I grew up in, there weren't a lot of college athletes, so I didn't have anybody to talk to, there was nobody coming back and saying, "Hey, here's what you need to do." I think kids these days are so lucky because they have so many people that are in their lives, have an idea of what college athletics are like. So honestly, for me, the biggest struggle was just trying to figure out how to be a college student athlete. And school was something that was always hard for me. I had to work really hard in the classroom. So just trying to balance school, learn how to be the best student I could be, train at an elite level, because you work hard, but you don't understand how hard you really have to work until you go and you become a student athlete. So for me, I think early on especially, it's just trying to figure out how to balance things, trying to figure out time management skills, how to just be disciplined and balance life, playing ball and going to school. So I think that was definitely my biggest challenge early on. And fortunately, I had a lot of great people in my life that helped me through that and working through that process.
Now, we just actually got a Facebook question about recruiting. This isn't the specific question, but I think this will kind of tie into what the question was. So I was going to ask this: now that you're a coach, you went through the recruiting process yourself as a player. Now looking back at it in retrospect, what is something that you wish you would have known in your recruiting process when you got started as a player, and now as a coach? What are the things that you're looking for in a player? What can players do to get noticed more in that recruiting process now that you're a coach?
Yeah, just I won't talk too much about my recruiting process because it was such a different point in time. I mean, there was no fall ball. all the
Right.
things that these athletes are doing in these days. It didn't exist that back then. So I think it's kind of hard to compare my recruiting process to what the kids are going through now.
Mhm.
I think the most important thing that these kids need to know right now is just making sure that they become the best softball player that they can be and not rush the process. I think the way that the game is now, kids are just trying to get recruited. They're just out there, they're just playing games, they're not practicing, and they're not developing their fundamentals. And I think that's something that's missing. I'm sure well, actually, I don't know if you guys are aware, but we recently changed our recruiting rules, which I'm an advocate of it because it's going to help to slow the process down. I mean, we were having eighth graders commit to go to colleges. I was still playing football at the bus stop with the
Right.
guys in eighth grade. So I think right now kids are still at a young age caught up in how do I get recruited, but we're hoping as you know, and I'm just kind of speaking on behalf of our Division One coaches, as this is something we collectively as a group decided, but it slows it down. So I would just advise all younger kids to just make sure that they're developing their skills, and they're focusing on just having good sound mechanics. And I just preached that to the kids that we had in camp, and everybody wants to learn how to get faster, and but they have to understand that you need to have sound mechanics in order to develop that. So but yeah, that would be what I would say.
Showcase players, right? Not softball players. See that a lot in the baseball world. People that measure up really well on the measurables, but games not so much sometimes. It seems like.
Right, absolutely.
We could dive a
Yes,
little
for
more
sure.
into some of that a little later here. One thing, I know you kind of, from reading through a little bit about your history, um, you were pitcher, infielder, pitcher, outfielder. You kind of bounced around
Yes,
in
yep.
college. You were all, obviously, from looking at it, it sounds like you were a team player. Whatever it took to be on the field, you were a part of it. Um, some of that success that you had ultimately led to you being, selected as the second softball player in the Virginia Tech Sports Hall of Fame. There's some, actually, talking about our Orioles, Johnny Oates is in there, Michael Vick. I mean, there's several
Yep.
people in that list, but you were the second softball player to make it. I think there's 4 or 5 now, but you were number 2. What? Obviously, that's a 4-year accomplishment, not just you had one great season and you were the team MVP accomplishment. But what does that mean to you, and to be nominated and then awarded that amongst I guess the alumni in Virginia Tech Sports Association there? What's that like? What's that mean to you?
Yeah, I was truly just honored and humbled with that accolade, and to be quite honest, I was surprised when I when I got the phone call about it. So, to go into the Hall of Fame, you're not only going up against softball players, but there's so many other great female athletes that have come through Virginia Tech. So to be a part of such a special group of people truly was pretty awesome. But I think most importantly for me, that award was more, or that honor was more about my teammates, my coaches, and everybody that was a part of the program in my years that I was there. And, for me, that honor is more of, it's not about me. It's about just, I'm happy that I was able to be a part of a group of people that was able to start that program. And I feel like all that award is, it's just, it exemplifies the people that were part of it. Um, I'm a pretty, I'm just not a me kind of person. So, but for that night, it was a pretty special night to be able to celebrate that. And
I bet.
and what was most awesome about it is just to see my family as happy as they were. And so yeah, so that was that. Just blessed to be a part of such a outstanding group of people, and very honored and humbled.
I bet that's got to be amazing. I can't imagine. Now let's talk a little bit about your coaching. What got you into coaching? Was it something you always wanted to do, or is that just something kind of landed in your lap? Did you start giving lessons back in high school or college? How did that all start for you?
Yeah, so I've always been a coach. It seems like even when I was in high school, I was giving lessons, I was doing camps, and I was doing clinics. I went to Tech in the summertime. I was coming home, and I was still doing the lessons and the clinics. I actually coached travel ball for a couple of summers when I wasn't playing. So, and I just kind of knew, I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And my junior year at Tech, I just said, this is what I'm going to do. And I created a plan and said, I'm going to finish off my undergrad strong. And I want to go to graduate school, get my foot in the door. I knew getting a master's was extremely important. So that's kind of what happened. I just created that plan. But early on, when you decide to go in this profession, your why is a little different than it is when you've been doing it now. This is year 17 for me in the profession.
Mm.
My why back then was I love the game and I love to compete, and that's all I knew was softball. So that was my why. I just want to go and coach, and I want to still be a part of this game that I loved. So I think, like I said, my why has changed since then, but that was the main reason why I wanted to do it. I'm just a competitor at heart, so yeah. So I've known for a while.
Now, what would you say, was the biggest transition you had to make going from player to coach? 'Cause not everybody, who's a good athlete is a good coach. Not everybody who plays it, doesn't play at a high level is, there's some people that never made it to, Division 1 that are excellent coaches.
Mhm.
So for you, what was the biggest transition you had to make um, in that?
Having an understanding that not everybody's like me. So people are different. And I, as a coach, as a person, and as a player, I'm pretty intense. I play the game just recklessly hard at times back in the day. I mean, I would be on the mound pitching, and I would tell my third baseman and first baseman and catcher that if the ball comes anywhere near me, I was getting it to stay away, and they kind of knew it. I mean, that's just who I was as a player. Um, and for me, and it's something too that I had to get used to with just playing with different types of people. But as a coach, especially, I had to learn that lesson in that just because somebody doesn't play the game the way that I play doesn't mean that they're not playing hard. And I went to Ohio, I went to Syracuse, but the one person that really taught me that lesson was my first year when I was at Oklahoma State. We had a catcher there, Courtney Toddy. She was an All American, and she was the complete opposite of me. Country girl from Oklahoma. I mean, did just everything she did. She was cool, calm, and collective. And I mean, she'd go into the box and say, "Watch, coach, I'm just gonna swing out of my shoes and I'm just going to hit a home run." But she was so laid back. But Courtney, we called her Toddy. What she taught me was that we're not all like you, but we can still work hard and be intense and basically have our own hype level. I have a very high hype level.
Hmm.
Courtney had the lowest hype level that you could ever have had. So I think that was the biggest thing, is just adjusting to different personalities and understanding that people were going to they're different than me, and I'd have to coach them differently than I was coached. So
Now, what would you say some of your biggest coaching principles and philosophies are? And was there a coach that you learned those from?
right. So for me, obviously we have our philosophies out on the field, but when I became a head coach, you have philosophies as an assistant, but really when you step into this leadership role, you really have to think through what you're going to be about, what you want your program to be about. So I created goals for myself before I came to Miami, and that first goal was I wanted to help bring the best out of my players as people and maximize their potential as leaders and build their confidence and develop strong women, and that's a lot of the things that we do in our program is geared toward that. So that's one thing. It's important for me that when we go out and recruit, we're looking at character. It's a big deal to bring in people of high character who are going to do things the right way, because that's just what we do here at Miami. And the other thing was I didn't want to be the coach that just was only about softball, and I wanted to have a part of my kids' academic success and the things that they do in the classroom. So even the way we structured our study hall comes from just me wanting my coaching staff and I to be a part of that, because they are here to go to school, and from a softball standpoint, win championships. So
Mhm.
everything that we do in our program is based around those goals that we've set forth for our coaching staff. So
Now, one thing, I mean, over my years of coaching, not your level, obviously, but one thing that I think is the most important is culture,
yes.
whether it be in the dugout, whether it be on the practice field, whether it be from the parents. How do you, and I think you kind of brought it up and maybe it's the players you bring in, but how important is building that culture? And how, when things get tough, how much do you lean on that culture?
So when you start off as a head coach, and at least this was me, that was 8 years ago now, you understand that culture is important, but I don't know if you're intentional about how to go about building it, sustaining it, and make sure that it stays in your program. Um, as of late, and as I grow, and the older I get, and the longer I'm in this profession, I've become extremely intentional about what culture is, what we're going to be about. And I actually just spoke at the Columbus Coaches Clinic. I was in Pittsburgh 2 weeks ago speaking. And one of my topics was on culture and how important it is to be intentional about building it. So here at Miami, almost everything that we do now is built or geared toward how are we going to develop our culture. I know a lot of people think that once the culture's set, that's it. I'm not a believer in that. I believe that culture, it can change. It can change in a year. And I think it depends on the kids and the people, really the people with staff. It depends on who's in the program. So for me, it's my job as a coach to make sure that first off, I'm recruiting the right people to come into the program, whether it's our student athletes, whether it's our coaching staff. But everything that we do, like I said, it revolves around that. And culture for me is first and foremost, along with developing relationships with everybody that's a part of this. My kids, our coaching staff, and our support staff. So yes, I think it's huge. And when I first came here, I had to figure out, or when I first became a head coach, I had to figure out, okay, what are we going to be about as people, not just on the softball field, but outside of softball. So I came up with our values and standards of our program, which I know a lot of schools have. Um, these are not just things that we say; these are things that we work on. A lot of the things that we do in our program revolve around our values and standards, and these are things that I want our kids to know and to understand. And most simply put, we talk about just the Red Hawk way, and what that means is just operating in a sense of respect, having respect for everyone and everything, and working hard, and being excellent in all that we do. So that's kind of the foundation of our program, and just what the culture of Miami is about.
Now, you said this as a player, there were things you had to adjust to as a college player, and with the workload, practice. How do you, as a coach, how do you help balance the field work, the weight room, the classroom, for your players who are going through this as well? I mean, you've been through it, but now they're getting a chance to. How do you help your players get through that?
Yeah, you know what? I actually just put my earbuds on. Is this better? Can you guys hear me a little better now? Or
Yeah,
was it
that's
fine before?
yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. You sound good. Did you
Okay,
hear that question?
awesome. So I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
No
I
problem.
did
Yeah.
not.
No problem. So
Yeah.
since you were a player, you went through it. You had mentioned about trying to get used to your classes and your workload, and working out with your team.
Right.
Now that you've done that as a player, now you're a coach. What are some things that you do as a coach to kind of help your players get used to that process and kind of get a good habit of a good work ethic?
Right. So I think the biggest thing in our program is we just teaching our kids how to be organized with their time. And I understand the demands that they're placed under, but we do as much as we can to help kind of groom them. I mean, to the point where it is required that before they start classes, that they're going around campus and walking through and making sure they know where every single building is before the day of. And And we just talked to them, winter here, you know, it's not an excuse to be late to class because it's snowing out. I tell them, you better plan to walk. If it takes you 5 minutes, you better plan for 20 minutes. So, and the car thing's not an excuse. Like they can't show up late and say, well, coach, I had snow in my car. I expect them to know all that. So I think a lot of it's just kind of teaching them to think a little bit differently. And, you know, I'm fortunate to have awesome kids in the program that a lot of this, the grooming it's not coming from me. It's coming from the kids that are in the program that kind of understand how things work here at Miami. But I think the one thing too that I've had to learn is be patient with the new kids and know that, you know what, sometimes they're going to miss on something and that's okay. But yeah, just helping them in whatever, you know, whatever capacity that they need us for. And I think our student athletes know that no matter what, my coaching staff is here to help them with the process. But yeah, I just think it's just being intentional about planning and helping them to stay organized and helping them to manage their time. I think lots of times the younger kids kind of think I'm being a little bit too much, but there's some intention behind it, and we're grooming them and they don't even know.
Right.
So
Now, one thing, you've been doing this a little while. What would you say is, and maybe it's the players slightly. I mean, but what about the game has changed the most since you started coaching? You know, you started at Oklahoma State. Now you're the head coach. What
Yep.
along the way, what do you think has been the biggest difference?
You know what? You guys kind of cut off again. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Earbuds out. I didn't hear the front half or the first half of that question.
What has been the biggest difference for you as a coach from when you started to now? You know, like you say, you know, you're kind of covering more than a couple years here. You know, what is it the players and that, or is it the exposure of the game? Is it some of the stuff, you know, from administration? What would you say are some of those biggest changes you had to face?
Ooh, yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a lot of things that have changed, but I think that's just the natural course of anything in life. I mean, I've been in the game, or at least coaching, for 17 years. And I think one of the biggest changes is technology and social media. I think that's brought some just different things. I think it's been good. And I think, you know, we all know that there can be some hindrances as well with it. But back in the day, I wasn't checking social media accounts and doing my Google searches as much as we do now. I think the amount from a recruiting standpoint, just the way we recruit, you know, hopefully it'll go back to what it used to be, where kids are committing so early. But yeah, technology. I mean, all the technology that's out there with Blast Motion and Rapsodo. I mean, there's so much stuff, and I know a lot of these kids go to the hitting facilities and the pitching facilities, and you know, sometimes, and I'm guilty of it as well, we get so caught up on all that. And Tyler, I think you mentioned it earlier, you get caught up on the measurables, yet you don't know how to just go out and play the game and compete. So I think that's been the one change with the athletes these days. And I think a part of it too is just the way recruiting is. You know, kids don't compete anymore. They just kind of go out and they just want to showcase their talents. But for us and my coaching staff, and you know, for all coaches, it starts with just that competitiveness. And I don't know. I feel like that's something that we're having as coaches to teach more. And I think maybe it's because of the social media and the cell phone. I mean, I am so old that I did not have a cell phone in college. So it's kind of, you know, it was a completely different time. I mean, I was, like I said earlier, I was 8th grade. I was before school, getting on the bus. I was playing football at the bus stop. And, you know, I was a kid always playing outside. So I think, but I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I think there's a lot of positives that have come from technology. I think the game is so much better because of it. I think kids are faster, they're stronger. We're a lot more knowledgeable about so many different things. And I think the best change, though, has been the visibility of our sport on television. So, and just so much credit to all the coaches who have been a part of that and continue to be a part of that, because that's been a huge for our sport, is just the notoriety that we're receiving right now.
Now, with your program, you do camps, clinics, like most teams around the country. What are some of the biggest things that you're seeing in younger players that that is a common thing that players are lacking, that maybe if they spend a little more time on it in their high school years or even younger travel ball years, what are some of those things that are the common occurrences that you're seeing with the younger players?
Oh, I think like I touched on it earlier. It's just the lack of fundamentals. I think we could put on a clinic for 2 hours just on throwing mechanics and
Right.
how to throw the ball properly. And again, I think people want immediate results. Kids want immediate results. They want to learn one pitch one day and then learn the next pitch. And I don't think they're focusing on the right things. And I'll just take my experience kind of growing up, like even with my dad. I mean, I was a pitcher, and bless his heart, because I'm so thankful for all this, for what he made me do back in the day. But I mean, I was through a spinner for 30 minutes of my workout and focusing on that particular fundamental and just not rushing into things. So I think that's the biggest thing. Is I wish kids would just try to develop their skill more. I think lots of times when you get kids to come to camp, it's they want all these drills, and really you can do one drill to perfect technique. But I think that's just the biggest thing. And hopefully with us slowing down the recruiting process, kids won't be so wrapped up in exposure and prospect camps that they'll actually want to develop their skills.
That is awesome. What would you say is something that you learned from the game, whether it be from playing or coaching, that you use in your everyday life? That you gotta get up and get a grocery list together, whatever, normal things that normal people do. What would be one of those things that from the game that you use every day?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. And I don't even think I've learned so many invaluable lessons just from playing sport and not necessarily just playing softball. But I think one of the biggest things that I've learned, and it's something that I try to teach with our student athletes here at Miami, is just the confidence piece. I think a lot of athletes, we play ball our whole life, and we feel that's kind of our world. It's our comfort zone, and which it was for me. When I'm out on the field, that's like my sanctuary. That's my place. And but it really helped me to develop my confidence off the field as well, and it helped me to develop in the person that I am today. So many different lessons playing the game as far as discipline and hard work. And I think the other thing too is just passion. I think you learn being a part of a sport how far passion can get you in life. And I'm fortunate to be alongside of so many people, whether it's coaches or my athletes or other athletes, that are so passionate and driven to be great. And we learn that through sport. We learn teamwork and how to work together. And I think connectivity with others is huge. So I'm a huge proponent of kids being involved in team sports, because they don't know it while they're playing it, but there's so many different lessons and how to connect with people, because a lot of people, they struggle connecting. And that's something too that I work on. But sport has allowed me to figure out different ways to connect to people and to relate to people. So just thankful for being able to play the game and now coach the game.
That's awesome. Now, you were talking about confidence and things like that. Playing at the level that you played at, and now that you're coaching at that level, what are some things that maybe you did as a player, or now that you teach as a coach, to help with the mental side of it? We talked to many mental coaches out there, and it's amazing. It's such an important part of the game that some people lack, and I think getting to that level. Probably at an intense level. So, what are some of the things that you did, or maybe you teach your players to do? Is it journaling? Is it self-talk? Reading books? What are some of those things that you like?
Wow, that's a whole podcast in itself.
Yes, it is.
So, my coaching staff and we spend a lot of time on that part, on the how to help them build their confidence and the motivational side. And when I get new coaches that come on board, I'm pretty sure They're thinking she spends way too much time on this stuff that's not even about the X's and the O's. But I think it's just kind of the coach that I am in trying to help our mold our athletes both physically and mentally. And so, yes, I'm definitely a proponent of positive self-talk. I mean, there's so many different methods that we've used here at Miami and in my time here. But I think the most important thing is that not one thing is going to work for every student athlete.
Right.
And you really have to figure out what works for them. For our student athletes, we like to give them different ideas of things that that they can do that can help them with their process. So one thing that we're talking about with our kids this year is this idea of the Thrive Zone. And basically for us, and I listened to Morgan Zirkle's Coach Z's podcast, and I'm pretty sure she brought up Thrive Zone. But anyways, it's just this idea of how to get our kids to really focus on staying at that optimal level mentally. And in our game, because it's a game of failure, I think everybody understands red is if you look at a chart, if they're in the red, that's not a good mindset. But we're trying to get them to be in that green. And not only we just talked to them today about their ability to opt into the Thrive Zone is what we say immediately. So right after, hey, the umpire doesn't call a strike for a pitcher that she thought, our athlete's ability to overcome that failure in that moment is it's huge. And we just told them today, we can't, for pitchers, I talked to my pitchers about this, we can't go 2-3 pitches or a whole inning without opting into that Thrive Zone. So for me, it's just, I think it's important for coaches to be extremely intentional about how they train and making sure that they go out with some kind of mental component. This year, our kids were all about our developing a warrior mindset, and what that means for us is loyalty to your teammates, to your coaches, but also having the strength and the courage. And when my coaches looked up the word courage, I don't think people think being brave and but courage, a part of it is just not fearing failure. So for us, that's how we're relating that to our student athletes is we have to be courageous. We have to take risks. And we're basically trying to take concepts that everybody out there, all coaches talk about, but trying to put it in a positive light. And we have here at Miami what we call our 5 practices, which we developed. And there's 5 things that we go out every day. And for us, that's what we're doing, practicing like champions. So again, I think there's a bunch of different methods. Last year, when our overall goal as a coaching staff was to build culture, or to just kind of get things back on track, we read a book, and we thought that was a big deal. But again, every practice that we have with our kids, there's some kind of training that's being done in practice from a practical standpoint. And I think that's the other important thing, is that a lot of people will talk about all these things that you can do, but if you don't help your athletes to actually apply these things in practice, or constantly talk to them about it in practice, all it is just talk. And the
Right.
textbook can say whatever it wants, but if you don't apply it, it doesn't really matter. So it's kind of how I feel about the mental side of the game and the development of it.
Now, one thing I want to ask, because I'm a coach. I've been kind of a head coach. I've always, for a long while, I was kind of a take control of everything. What? How important is it to have a staff of coaches? And you have GAs that kind of come and go every couple of years, or assistant coaches become other coaches. I mean, like, how difficult is it, though? I mean, difficult is it, but how important is having a good coaching staff around you that believes in the same principles and philosophies kind of that you do?
If you want to be successful, you have to have good people around you. You have to, your program has to have, whether it's your coaching staff or your sports staff. But I am so fortunate here at Miami, with my coaching staff that I have here with Coach Z and Coach Sanders. And, it's though they really complement who I am as a person. And they've just been just fantastic to have on staff. So the one thing that goes on here at Miami is, like, my last 2 assistants, 2 of them went on to be head coaches. And I get people that filter out. So the one thing that's a difficult process for me is not having the continuity that I would like. So But with that being said, and lots of times I'm attracting younger assistants that maybe don't have as much experience. But the one thing that I've really had to get better at is, and I still continue, and it's something that I still need to work on, is empowering them in knowing when I need to manage and when I just need to let them go and help them to grow. And that's a tough thing for me because I'll be the first to say it's, I micromanage, and a lot of it too is simply because I know how all the processes work in my program because I've been doing it. But now I'm much more intentional about just, okay, Clarissa, let that go. Don't micromanage that. But now I talk to my two assistants who I say, okay, this is one thing I'm really going to have to nitpick because of whatever reason. And then some things I'm like, I trust you, just go and do it. I mean, early on, I was worried about if the chart that nobody saw, if it wasn't perfectly lined and I mean, I was worried about too many different things. And the more experience I have, and just the older I get, the more I just kind of let them do their thing. But again, I just got to give a shout out to my coaching staff. I love them both to death. And, like I tell them, it starts with who we are as people. But yeah, so I'm lucky. I've got two good ones on staff.
I have a question that I haven't asked another guest. I'm just curious about it because yours could be completely different from coaching. If you weren't coaching softball right now, what would be that dream job outside of that? What do you think you would be doing if you had a second choice?
That is the ultimate question, because that is a question that I ask myself. And to be honest, I'm not sure. I'm so blessed and fortunate in that I have a job that I absolutely love, even on the hard days. And so I don't know. It would have to be something in the athletic realm because I'm a diehard sports fan, and something in the sports industry. But what that would be, I don't know, because I'm loving what I'm doing, and like I said, just fortunate to do it, coach for free. I don't know. I like the leadership side of things. I like the motivational side of sport. I don't know, maybe do something with that. But no, I'm doing the job. I have my dream job, so I'm one of the lucky ones.
Awesome.
Now we have a fan question here. It says, I guess before we wind down here, we'll take this one. Do you allow your players, I guess allow, or do you have players that wear the face mask on the infield? I think watching the game and how fast it is, I almost believe that most pitchers at the college level should probably wear one for safety. But how is that on your team, or is that just a player decision?
Player decision. I'm not opposed. For me, if I've had one pitcher since I've been here that's worn a face mask, Megan Matera, but she's been the only one. But I don't. I'm pretty indifferent to it. If sometimes it's just for safety reasons, and so yes, it does not matter to me.
I'll say I just think of the Miranda Ellis thing in the playoffs and how crazy of a play that was, and how, I mean, ultimately, I don't think that's what ended their season, but just you look at it and you're like, holy moly, that could have almost probably been prevented.
Right. Yes.
But it is what it is. Just it's one of those conversation pieces. There's no real right or wrong answer, I think. And I think for most young kids playing around most of these high school fields and some of these places, the fields aren't that great. So for safety reasons, you probably should do it. Uh,
Right. Absolutely. Totally agree.
so as we wind down here, we got a few more questions to go. But were there any topics or any subjects maybe that we haven't hit on yet that maybe you wanted to bring up and speak to?
No, I think you guys hit on it, and I think if maybe one thing, and I'm really an advocate, especially the older I get, of coaches just developing, our female athletes to be strong leaders and giving them the confidence that they're going to need later in life. And I think having male coaches is extremely important. And I just hope that they're kind of preaching good things to their female athletes. And I think in this day and age to see, females, the Giants just hired a softball player. I just think it's awesome. And I think as coaches, we need to bring to light, in regardless of the field, but just females who are in leadership roles. So again, it's, I've become a huge advocate of, I've become a lot more intentional as well with my student athletes, and making sure that they know that whatever they want to do in life, regardless of what the makeup of the field is, if there's just men in the profession, I want them confident, and I want them to be the future leaders of our country in whatever field that they have. And I really do think it's important as coaches that you start talking to them at a young age, and really let them know that dream big, and great things can happen for them if they just work really hard.
Now, speaking of empowering young women to become leaders, if you could go back and tell your younger self anything, what would it be?
Whew, that's there's a lot probably. I would say, I think younger on, especially as an assistant, I was very task focused. And even with my student athletes now, you tell them to do something, they'll do it. But I try to tell them, and even with my staff now, is you have to understand the overarching goal of what it is you're doing. I don't like my staff or student athletes to just do things just because I tell them. I wasn't able to see that as a younger assistant. I was just doing what I was told to do. I would tell my younger self to be a lot more confident. I think that's one thing that is tough when you're just first starting out in any profession. But I would also tell my younger self to handle criticism better, because I think I probably took it, and I think a lot of females, we do this. We take things very personally instead of constructively. And I think I would have saved myself some if I just would have figured that out a little earlier. But just like we tell our student athletes, you have to accept failure. And a long time ago, I wasn't accepting failure. I saw every time I failed as a defeat, as opposed to, this is really going to make me stronger. And it's taken me years of failure to realize, like, hey, it's a part of it, and to see the big picture, and that this moment. And I tell our student athletes this moment is hard, and this moment is tough, but I promise you that you're stronger for it. And again, I don't think young kids, young athletes, and young coaches really understand that. And so, yeah, those are some of the things I would tell my younger self.
Awesome. I know you guys had as a team had a very successful season last year, conference wise. But spinning off of that a little bit, what would be some of your goals, professionally or even personally, over the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I think for me, just as a coach, your ultimate goal is to continue to win championships, and to sustain this level of excellence. And for me, I think that's the biggest thing in being here at Miami, and for me personally, just to continue to become a better leader. It's something I have I have good days, I have not so good days, I have bad moments, but just my ability to continue to grow as a person and as a leader, first and foremost, is something that is a goal of mine. And I think it's just going to make me a stronger leader and a stronger coach for the program the program that I'm at. But yeah, ultimately it's just to win championships, and to manage to just sustain the culture that we have here at Miami.
Now, the one thing we love about our podcast is we're connecting with people that we never thought we'd be able to connect with before. And we're helping other people, especially younger players that listen, coaches that are listening, connect them with the right people. So, with that being said, who is somebody over the years of playing or coaching that you have met, or you at least have been following, that you would recommend having on our show to bring our listeners value every single week?
I So this person is, I mean, one person instantly comes to mind, and that's Coach Shonda Stanton. It's funny because it's Morgan Zirkle's a college coach, and I know Coach Z has a lot of great things to say about her, and I just have to second that. And Coach Stanton is somebody who, she was at Marshall when I was actually a student athlete at Virginia Tech, so she has known me since my playing days. And for whatever reason, she has always been extremely supportive of me. She's been a really great friend and mentor and encourager. And I'm really fortunate to have Coach Stan in my corner. And on top of that, she's a fantastic person. And she's somebody who's so, at least when I'm around her, she's got a lot of energy. She's extremely positive about things, and she's a bit intense, but I appreciate somebody with that type of personality. So I just think she's good quality people. And yeah, so I would highly recommend you folks interviewing her. And I think she's got a great story. She just comes from small town Ohio and spent so many years at Marshall, and now doing great things at Indiana. So definitely, she's got a fan here, and well, she's got two fans in Oxford. So
Excellent.
I'm one of two.
I was about to say, honestly, we've kind of had a little talk with her back and forth and trying to get it scheduled. It was a little tough, but we'll get it worked out because I think you're right. I think she would be fantastic. This has been fantastic, honestly, and I think for people who don't follow along, you post so much great stuff online about the team and some of the things you're doing, and some of the successes and some of the practices. It's really great. But where can people find you online? Where can they find out more about the camps and clinics that you're doing as a team? Can you just let people know, honestly, the best way to possibly reach out and get a hold of you if they want more information about anything?
Yeah, absolutely. So my Twitter, I'm pretty active on Twitter, and it's just basically our team site, and we love showing everybody what our student athletes are doing on a daily basis. I think it's important. But yeah, they could reach me on Twitter at Red Hawk Coach C. They can also go to our Miami website and find all of our information, and that's MiamiRedHawks.com.
Excellent. This has been great. I have one more question for you. This is my favorite question because I feel that
Okay.
music tells a lot about a person. So,
Yes.
if you had one either pitching appearance or at bat in the 2020 Olympics, what song would you choose as your walk up or walkout song?
Yes, so like I said, I'm a proud Hawaiian. I'm just a kid that came from the islands and have just been blessed on my journey in life. And so no matter where my life takes me, I will always be just that kid from Hawaii. So for me, Jimmy Weeks Project, Homegrown, which basically is a song about growing up in Hawaii, talking about our culture, and just no matter where you go in life, you stay grounded, you stay humble, and just remember where you come from. So that's my song. That's my jam.
That's excellent. I love it.